To hear more from Claren about her writing process and how to do some of that same research yourself, visit the Hourland channel on YouTube. A new law is expanding the age range for young immigrants to access green cards, work permits, and other benefits if they had been abandoned, abused, or neglected. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham signed off on the law this spring after years of advocacy work from the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center and other groups. The state law now reflects federal immigration law, allowing people 21 and under to apply for special immigrant juvenile status. The cutoff in New Mexico had been 18 years old, with few exceptions. This week, executive producer Jeff Proctor speaks with an attorney from the Immigrant Law Center and a policy director from Bold Futures NM about the process of getting the law passed and how this bill could impact the lives of those 19 to 21-year-olds.
Jessica, Hasmin, thank you both so much for joining me on New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you so much for having us.
So as we just heard, the two of you were sort of the tip of the spear in getting House Bill 15 through the New Mexico legislature earlier this year. And we'll get to that experience in a moment. But let's start kind of with the lens wide open. The bill expanded access to what's called Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, or SIJS. Jessica, let's start with you. What does that designation mean legally in the immigration context, and who makes the determination in terms of who qualifies?
Yes, so Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, or SIJS, as you pointed out, is a special form of humanitarian relief designated by federal Congress since 1990 for immigrant youth who are abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both parents, and where reunification with the parents isn't viable. And so under this process, it's a unique intersection of federal and state law where they've authorized the state to issue those findings of abuse, abandonment, and neglect. So we go to the state court process first to obtain an order that, with all of those requisite findings, once we obtain that order, then we proceed with the immigration phase of the case, which is then to proceed with the process for special immigrant juvenile status, and then that will ultimately give them protection to remain in the country, being in a more stable environment here in New Mexico. And then it ultimately it includes a pathway to permanent status and citizenship. And so it's a very special, unique form of relief that we're proud to work with immigrant youth across the state in trying to make sure that they know about it, are educated about it, and see if we can actually assist them in making sure that that can happen for them.
So in the end, it's a state court judge who makes that determination.
The state court judge makes the determination of abuse, abandonment, neglect, but it is only within the authorization of the Federal Immigration Agency to give the grant of the status. And so that's a separate process.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Hasmin, those three words that Jessica just mentioned, abuse, abandonment, and neglect, do those have special meaning in this context? Is there a particular set of criteria that goes into making that finding, or are they as straightforward as what we think they are?
No, and interesting you should bring that up. The bill actually addressed abandonment and how we wanted to support the court's decision in expanding what was considered abandonment. But, within the family law context and even within child welfare, there are very discrete definitions that judges and federal agencies and state agencies follow when we're talking about abuse, abandonment, or neglect. And I think one thing that we always talked about at the very beginning is, what does this mean when the goal should always be family reunification? And so we'll see a very interesting landscape where in these particular situations, you have a traumatic experience where the reunification isn't something that's viable. And so from that, you can obtain this type of status.
Let's stay with you for a minute, but I would like for both of you to respond to this. I'd like to talk about some real life experiences without, in some instances, of course, naming names, but what doors does SIJS open that had previously been closed? What are the benefits of obtaining that status?
Oh my goodness. So one of the reasons why this was very important for us was because of all the opportunities that it brings, right? I can speak personally to what happens when you don't have access to SIJS. I was 19 when I learned that I would have been eligible. In my particular family situation is that I grew up with a single mother and my father was absent, and there was absolutely no way that there would ever be reunification because my father just wasn't in the picture. But had I gone through the process, I would have been able to obtain a work permit. I would have been able to eventually obtain a green card and a pathway to citizenship. But even from the point of submitting an application and receiving a letter from the federal agency that's processing that application for SIJS status, you're eligible for healthcare, like Medicaid. You're eligible to better navigate education, which was incredibly difficult for me as an undocumented person, and even trying to get my law license, still undocumented. You have access to economic development opportunities like banking. You have access to driver's licenses. It's a lot easier, even though New Mexico has a lot of immigrant-friendly policies. So, it's a different world, and security. At the end of the day, even living in fear that you're going to be separated from your family and your friends and the place that you call home, having that sense of security that they can't remove you because of SIJS is, I think, huge when it comes to mental health of the youth and the families.
Jessica, prior to passage of House Bill 15, who was eligible for this status?
There was a limitation, again, because of that intersection of state and federal law. Under state law, we were only able to obtain court orders up to the age of 18 based on the limitations of court jurisdiction. However, under federal law, the federal regulation allowed for immigrant youth to obtain this form of relief up to the age of 21, as long as the state law reflected that. And so it seemed like a very easy fix, although, it was a challenge to get it passed, but that's what changed. We were now able to expand that eligibility all the way up to age 21. And it also, within that law as well, we were also able to expand what abandonment means. And so a lot of the youth that we would work with, that especially in rural community, we would talk to them and we would realize they met all of the qualifications, but unfortunately their 18th birthday was a week before, and so they were aged out of the system. And then there would be cases where immigrant youth were like, well, is there any way that you can make an exception for us? And there was only rare exceptions where we could help someone that was still in high school up until the age of 18. But at least now we're able to meet with them at beyond the age of 18 and have giving them at least a 3-year cushion so that we can actually apply for this form of relief.
So this was not a mystery. You knew from the very beginning that the way to fix this was to make state law match federal law.
Correct.
When did the work begin? When did the conversations begin in trying to get state law to reflect federal law in this way?
Yeah, so even before I became an attorney at New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, our office had been working for 2 years with different law students across the country talking about this issue, trying to find a way to see how we could change the policy to reflect the federal law. But again, we're immigration attorneys. The capacity to do that when we have wait lists and we have so many different cases going before us. When I came on board, my supervisor, Monica Newcomer-Miller, who's really taken the leadership in a lot of that robust bill drafting, she turned to me and she said, you know what, it's time, would you consider this? And it was always my dream to become a movement lawyer. So I said, absolutely, let's work with community, with mentorship from Hasmin as well. We worked with community, did listening sessions. We developed notes and figured out that based on what community's direction was, that there were a lot more gaps to be filled beyond that age gap. But there was actually gaps in how the law was applied in terms of what is abandonment, and also that there would have to be an emergency clause so that we don't run against the clock again when we pass the law. And so it was a long process, but eventually through that listening sessions, I think that's where we really developed the strength of that bill. And that is what created the movement and the spark for why the law actually passed.
So once you had done that work in community, the listening sessions, you had identified a bill sponsor. Now it is actually time to take what you'd gathered from community and go in front of the Socratic wonder that is the New Mexico legislature. Can you talk some about what the experience was like once you got to Santa Fe? What was the experience like during committee hearings, floor debates? Put us in the room. How did that work?
Yeah, that's legislative advocacy is a difficult space to be in for anyone. I think, almost everyone in our state and across the country knows that we're the only legislature where our electeds are not paid for their time. So that is a challenge in and of itself. It's a challenge that these are systems not necessarily made for people like us, people of color, youth, immigrant communities, people who have been criminalized by various systems and are afraid to navigate these spaces. And then you have people like us who are part of the community. We look like the community, even though we're lawyers and have these fancy titles. people look at us and they also see our community, which is great for our community to be seen in those spaces. It is also challenging for us as leaders to walk into the spaces and not be afforded the respect that anyone should have walking into the state legislature. So it was challenging, but I think the beautiful part was that movement building that Jessica talked about. When we showed up to the Roundhouse, we didn't show up alone. It wasn't just the NMILC, it wasn't just Bold Futures and the other organizations that supported this. It was the community. We showed up together and in strength and numbers. And if there's one thing that I think our legislative officials really look to is, who am I serving and are they in the House? And our community showed up, and any time that we were preparing for committee, there were calls, there was follow-up, they would show up to the Roundhouse. And even after being on session floors, whether it was a House or the Senate, people were there. And once it was passed, there was this huge sense of relief. Like, people were running through the halls, across the hall from one chamber to the other. I know Speaker Martinez and his whole office ran to the Senate chamber, and we were all crying and hugging, because that was the beauty of being there together and in community, because it was a whole movement.
So the bill passed by really wide margins, right? It passed, I think it was 64-0 in the House, right. 33-6 with 6 Republicans voting against. On the Senate side, I'm not super interested in the margins really, but I want you to talk actually some more about how community overcomes resistance. How did that work in this context?
Yeah, I think, Hasmin really hit the point, is like we built power in community. It's about building power with the people rather than power of the law. And so when you have people collectively using all of our positivity, all channeling all of our own, strength, hope, faith, all of it, you name it. There was one particular client that was in the listening sessions that said, if there is only 1% chance of hope, I have 99% chance of faith. And we would read that to each other all the time, because there were moments where we were facing racism, microaggressions, in those spaces. And then at the same time, we were building allies with so many leaders that we have elected, and that we are proud to say that they've stood by us for something so important, because there was a sense of urgency. Like, people could be removed from this country without this form of relief. People need stability. And these are children, ultimately. This shouldn't have been as contentious as it was. But at the same time, when we realized that there was a movement building, that all of us were collectively coming together, you saw that every single hand that touched that bill made sure that bill made it through. And we all worked until the very end. I mean, we passed within 45 minutes of the session closing. And if you see on camera from that public record, you'll see that, I'm literally in tears once the bill's passed. I'm embracing with some of our Senate sponsors, as well as one of our state representatives that was there seated next to me. And then as I walked across, there was people coming, like she said, running across to give each other hugs, impacted youth who were calling, impacted youth who were coming to hug and embrace in the hallways. Legislative aides running and just cheering, and we left no stone unturned. We did what was considered impossible, to pass a bill the first time with not even doing interim session. So there was a movement, and at the same time, we were hearing from some of our attorneys who were in our team that did a lot of work behind the scenes, that they were there with their children who are 10, 15, 12. And they're letting their children watch this process, and they themselves are moved that this could happen in our state, and that they, some of them had the privileges that some of the immigrant children do not have, and that we were able to do something pretty much impossible at the last minute. And it was able to happen with leadership and people collectively coming together to build a movement. And that's what's beautiful about it.
Did y'all know the governor was going to sign it, or was it pins and needles for the couple of weeks?
Last session was heavily on child welfare. And so that's one of the reasons why the bill was able to move forward as House Bill 15. It was originally Senate Bill 229, and Speaker Martinez supported in his office in creating an emergency bill. But to answer your question more pointedly, one thing that a lot of people in policy advocacy, especially at the legislature, will tell you is it's not over till it's over. So right. Even if a bill passes, even if you've gotten indications that it'll make it through, it is not through until it's signed. So we celebrated, we were happy, we slept a little, and then the following, week and the week after, it was still heavy mobilizing, ensuring that it would get signed. And once it did, I kid you not, the ink hadn't even dried. They sent us the picture on our phones and cases started getting assigned left and right. But it wasn't until it was signed and the news was shared and we were calling other agencies like Santa Fe Dreamers Project who took the first case that we knew, oh, the bill was passed. We can start assigning these cases now.
That's a great transition. And I would like for you both to weigh in on my last question, which is, now that House Bill 15 is the law of the land, what is the work ahead and how's it going so far?
The work ahead is we're in full thick of implementation. So we're working with the Administrative Office of the Courts and judges, doing trainings about this form of relief and making sure that we're educating about the law itself and how it's applied, as well as working with community across the state to see if we could reach more impacted youth and educate about whether or not they can qualify for this form of relief so that we could reach more people through referrals, as well as just working with other coalition partners, NMLC and SFDP and other private attorneys that work on these cases. We meet monthly to make sure that we are addressing all of these different templates and also trying to make sure that we are all on the same page of doing continued learning education classes so that other attorneys are aware that this is a new law. And so we're continuously trying to run against the clock here and trying to get as many youth before they age out into 21 now. And just also really trying to do the education piece and doing town halls with community so that they're aware that if anyone works with community, please contact an attorney, contact our office or any of the other offices so that you can get a consultation. That's really important.
And in addition to all that, you're taking cases, right?
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. And what's powerful is that, again, with this form of relief, we're able to actually assist with the defense of the removal case. And if they qualify for this form of relief, this prevents them from being removed from this country. And there is actually stability, and this actually benefits their overall well-being beyond just the generational impacts of access to permanent status and citizenship. And one thing that we were both talking about yesterday, that if there's one way we could just pinpoint what HB 15 really was, in the words of Claire Dudley Chavez from the Speaker's office, she said it was a little bill that could. It truly was, because we saw how it went through so many obstacles, but through community power, it was able to pass.
That's a great place to end the conversation, though I know we could go on and on. Jessica, Hasmin, thank you so much for coming down today.
Thank you for
Thank you for having us.